Sharon Diane Brazel, and Pugh is my married name. So I was born November 3rd, 1944 in Mobile, Alabama. Okay. My mom was Lois Bernice Seeley, and then Brazel, her married name. My dad, James Selby Brazel. My mom was born November 4th in 1918. My dad was born March 7th, 1920. I was born the day after my dad left for World War II. He had stayed in Mobile and had not been drafted earlier because he worked in the shipyard. He was a welder and he helped build a lot of the warships that we had been sending over. But then as time progressed, he was drafted. What were they like? We were very poor. I grew up, really struggling financially. They were great parents. I mean, they did everything that, good parents did, helped raise their kids. There were 6 children in our family. It was a big family. So we moved a few times because when my dad got back from the service, he took advantage of the GI Bill that allowed him to go to college. So he started in Mobile at the Mobile, we had a section for University of Alabama, but it was limited. So then later we moved to Tuscaloosa while he finished school as an electrical engineer at the University of Alabama. He worked as a television technician after that, So, but that was in the late 40s. That was actually before I started school when we were living in Tuscaloosa, and then lived for a while on my grandmother's farm, and that's where I started school. And then we moved to Mobile, and I can remember all of that. Now we did have, as I grew up, and the war was over, we helped raise money to bring the battleship Alabama back to Mobile. So I can remember that. Back then, I kind of always thought I wanted to be a secretary. My older sister was going to be a nurse. Choices for women in those days was very limited. You had most people just felt like they were going to be a housewife and that was going to be it. But if you chose to do anything else, it was very limited, as no women, girls had great aspirations to be an attorney or own a great multi-million-dollar company. It just didn't happen then. So my sister did study, my older sister, and she became a registered nurse. My sister, just younger than me, went to hair school. She became a beautician. So it was none of us at that time went to college. Now, the closest would have been my older sister, who got her nursing degree, and a portion of her schooling was at the University of Alabama. So she did have, some schooling there, at higher education. Okay, I loved John Kennedy. So I couldn't stand Lyndon Johnson, but John Kennedy was the greatest president. I always felt like he was. He was young. Maybe that was it. We could relate to him, but he was so smart. His speeches were incredible. And when he was first, campaigning and all, and I remember his speech about, putting man on the moon. And he said, before this decade is out, America will put man on the moon and bring them home safely. And you don't have to see it. And I still get a little teary. I mean, that was so traumatic for me. You just don't shoot the president of the United States, no matter what your differences are. And he was, I felt like, a really good president because he stood up. You talk about the Cold War, Khrushchev and Russia. They're sending they're sending nuclear weapons to Cuba. I'm in Mobile. We are a straight shot up the water from Cuba. And they had, when we were up in space and we had satellites, we could see the nuclear warheads, and they could take out the whole eastern coast. So Russia has some ships loaded with nuclear warheads, and they're headed to Cuba. And our Navy knows it. So we've got some ships that are out there in the water, and they meet and they stop. And America didn't know. But John Kennedy, his brother Robert, the whole group that he had were up all night, and they were waiting because we were not going to back off. Could have annihilated the entire planet if those two had, started fighting, but it was a situation, and Kennedy is on the phone with Khrushchev, and he's telling, get your ships turned around. And of course, Khrushchev is Russian. You don't do that. You don't back down for anything. And it's my understanding, my version of history, that Kennedy was saying, be the hero. You tell the world, you tell Russia that you turn those warships around in order to save them. You be the hero and take back attitude. And of course, so then they're waiting and they're waiting. And then, the Navy says, Mr. President, they're turning around. So he stopped that. He saved us. He was strong. He didn't bow down. He didn't back off. And that was some of the toughest times. That was the whole Cuban crisis thing that we had going on. So I think he was great. It was really sad that someone decided that they were going to take his life, because I do think that, and a lot of people wonder, how the world would be if Kennedy hadn't been shot. I think it would be better, or it would have been, at least for a certain period of time, because I think he was a very good leader, extremely smart, very articulate. He was a good leader. And he was a war hero. He had been hurt in action, and still, even with severe injuries, saved some of his fellow sailors by swimming with them. Strong swimmer. The Kennedys were all very athletic and strong swimmers, sailors, and football players, and all of that. But even being hurt, he was truly a hero. So, and then in July of '69, we actually had people walk on the moon and come home safely. So that kind of like it finalized that decade, starting with Kennedy and ending with the fulfillment of his dream. But yeah, it was a crazy decade. We were sitting in front of a television. We had some friends that had invited us over for dinner, and so we were all there, and so we watched it on television, and it was just like the whole world, Houston, the Eagle has landed. Yeah, it was an exciting time. We like to say, Houston was the first word ever spoken on the moon, and it was, but it was really neat just watching them actually walk on the moon. Better. I think that there were a lot of changes, and I think that a generation that stands up for things that are right and good, like the whole segregation thing. People still suffer, I know, from people that discriminate, but that's going to happen with all of us now. And so if we can just be on a level playing ground, then I think that people will survive a lot better. Yeah, that's pretty much it.